there's a war. There's been a war against Germany long preceding the First World War. And that the First and Second World War were just outcomes of a war against Germany that had been about 100 years prior. So about 1790, you're talking here about maybe the French Revolution being a good starting point for this direct attack. Intellectually, commercially, it's the British Empire's behind it. It's a long story, right? But I can just briefly tell you that the British sat down, and it's strange too, because England is a German word, England, Anglo-Saxons. So here's the German descendants. And so there's no answer to this. It's one of these great imponderables. But these sort of what we would now call Fabian roundtable groups, who have no allegiance to any country, although they are situated in England, they made up the intelligentsia of England. And it's this group, not the English people. They're Angland. They're Germanic. They're Saxons. But this evil group of Fabians and their progenitors, and this includes your Bertrand Russells and your H.G. Wells types, many others I could mention, they are the ones, and their forefathers, the Sir Francis Galtons and some other characters that take too long to mention. These characters had Germanophobia. And it was all based in trying to maximize British imperial dominion. And they saw Germany as a threat. So that's it in a nutshell. So, there's been a thing called Germanophobia loose in the world since about the 1700s. And it mostly emanates from French and British thinkers who were imperial. Germany was never anything but a benign power, even during the little bit of time when it was an imperial concern. It was totally benign. And had the world been run by the German imperialism, you couldn't even imagine the difference. But the British, and remember, it's Britain who created Francis Bacon. It's Britain who inaugurated the materialist reductionist ideology that conquered the world. Darwin comes out of Britain. We've got Boyle, Newton, and so on, right? Any figure from the outside is just a pawn, like the Round Table groups or whatever, or the Fabians. And any of these characters, they would all just be on the outside, actually mobilized. They're not the one. They are foot soldiers, but the real brain of Germanophobia, I think, is in the House of Hanover, which is a German province, and these are always considered traitors. But the strange thing is that the House of Hanover rules the British Empire. King William III, what they call from the House of Orange, is really properly decoded as the House of Hanover in Germany. And they have the Dutch connection as well, big time, through marriage. So this degenerate house, most of its leading members, Germany had already expelled in the 1700s to all parts of the world. That's why you'll find them in Brazil. The House of Hanover set up in different countries. One was France. What? We just mentioned France, right? Spain. And in South America, of all places, they were traitors to Germany and hated. But remember when the unification of Germany took place, where all these hundreds of duchies and provincialities all came together in the great German Empire? Hanover was now brought in. And then another terrible thing happened too, is when the Austrian wars took place, and this again would be Vatican-based wars against the Protestant people of Germany, the Germans had to bring back these Hanoverans to fight as mercenaries. And they went, yeah, okay. And they came back in, but not a good thing. It didn't bode well. But the short story of it is that the House of Orange is directly descended from the Catholic French. But more than that, worse than that, from the Merovingian dynasty, Matt. Right? The House of Hanover come actually, their origins, that's why they're all red-headed. If you look at Queen Beatrix and others, they're all red-headed women, right?
Interesting.
Prince Bernhard, all of these types. This House of Orange, that's why they're even called Orange, it's Orange in France, where Mary Magdalene is meant to have settled up. So that means that even though they're technically considered Protestants because they're in Germany, no, they're traitors because they're Catholics. But worse, they're fourth sect Merovingians who are hiding under both Catholicism and Protestantism. They'll do whatever it takes to fit in and to camouflage themselves. And they became, at the Battle of the Boyne in Ireland, they took out James Stewart of the fifth sect, and the fourth sect has been ruling England ever since. So they are the ultimate brain, the fourth sect, through the House of Orange, through the Merovingian line that didn't die out. And we have to thank these Holy Blood, Holy Grail type books, and also the great Ralph Bellis. Always must mention him because he really brought, the bacon home here with this story. So this group also then committed to Baconian reductionist science. Because remember, I told you it was imperialistic. And Francis Bacon was the man who said that Britain must rule the waves, that nature must be put upon the rack, and all of nature's secrets brought out by torture, by dissection, right? And this is the mentality of the psychopath. So he believed in the worldwide expansion of the British Empire. So there's where the Germanophobia originates, in his school. And they also later on became the Lunar Society, the Ashmolean Society, the Royal Academy, and the scum, right? But they were all scientists, of course. So they get plenty of halos and laurel leaves put on their heads because these were famous, scientists, right? But they were all British Anglophiles. But it leads up to the 20th century, in which the arch enemies in Britain fomented the Bolshevik Revolution to get Russia, right, out of the picture, because although Germany and Russia had been ancient enemies, they were about to join up in a way I just told you. They were actually, Bismarck was the engineer of this. He was the brainchild, it was his brainchild to unite the big bear, the big bear of the North, that Germany had never really worked well with. Alexander III had sent vast amount of ships for the American revolutionaries to fight the British. So the Britain then said, the Tsars are evil. We got to deal with them. And they did. They brought in Bolshevism, and we know how that happened. That the orders were given to let Trotsky out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and send him over there so he could fight and create the Bolshevik Revolution. Same with Lenin, same with those dirt-mongering dogs, right? So this was all part of the Germanophobia I'm talking about. And this triumvirate that would have changed Russia. Russia would have been moved from a third world country into something very splendid, which it never got the chance to do. In fact, it was subsumed by communism. So you can just imagine how that was held back as a culture. This is all done by the British, the brainchild. This is all the brainchild of the British upper classes, these Illuminati types. Very, very sinister. With France's backing, France has always been the hyena, the lapdog of Britain in many, many ways. Napoleon tried it with the help of Rome, with the help of the Vatican. He invaded the whole of Europe. He's the Roman Catholic. He's Roman Catholic. Austro-Hungary was Roman Catholic, and they were his allies. So when I said just earlier on that Austria declared war on Germany, think about that. Protestant Germany is attacked by Catholic Austro-Hungary, with France Catholic behind it. Are we seeing a picture form here? You damn right you are. Right? So watch out. There's enemies on all sides. This Germanophobia includes the Catholic Church in its war against Germany, something that most people have never even heard about or even thought about. But when you are a good forensic detective, you'll find out that even things that we're discussing here about philosophy and weird things about psychoanalysis, they're not disconnected. In fact, they're very connected to this whole matrix, this underlying war against the German people, the German language, German culture, and what have you. And I've been studying it for over 30, 40 years. It's a horror story. And the philosophy part of it is just a small anecdote, really. Important, but, just part of it. This disdain for German thought in terms of philosophy, homeopathy. We've got Dr. Hummer coming out of Germany. We've got Hahnemann, the creator of homeopathy, coming out of there. We've got Paracelsus coming out of there. The list goes on. You know what I mean? You've got your Jakob Boehmers and Meister Eckharts and Nicholas Kuzes. And people, if go to my shellingzone.com site, they'll see a list. They'll have a little intro. There's good videos on there as well, but there's also a lot of good information, of these great names that we should know. And they should have been the fathers of Western education, some of the people that I mentioned on that site, but they were never were. And they lost out to positivism, to materialism, and then obviously to postmodern thought as well. They were combating that. So the French schools that you talk of, particularly with Foucault and with Derrida, but others as well, they were the people who would liberally steal from this German tradition. Like I said, the camouflage. A lot of their ideas are hybridized and borrowed from idealistic thinkers. There's no question about that. But they're rescripted in a certain way that makes them look that they're the products of, the French. They're not. But through the American funding, these guys were then brought in and made dominant in the American schools. And that's how America fell. And this was multi-pronged, but these guys were given honorary degrees. Their progeny was allowed to be hired at the senior level, and then they police everybody coming up from below, not giving you the qualifications if you look like you're coming from that school. If you honor Germany, you won't get a pass. But other people whose minds are psychopathic and left brain, they'll be the ones given the degrees, and so that they get the positions. So it's gone on and on now. So for over 200 years now, this has been the pattern of the West to downplay German thinking. The only place that still maintains this is South America. And this has to do, of course, with Germany and Austria once having those places as colonies. So if you go down to Brazil and Argentina, this whole tradition, including people like Otto Rank and other psychologists and all, are still taught in the South American schools, but they're not taught in any North American school worth a shit. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's a good sign. I always keep thinking that one day, this South American scholars will do the right thing, and people will start to get, they'll trend, maybe Jordan Peterson, somebody will start to refer to them, and they'll get their day. I don't hold my breath on that, of course, but it's my secret wish that their traditions, because they're big time into Karen Horney, Melanie Klein, Otto Rank, in their colleges, they haven't given away to this positivism of the West.